Today, we welcome our sister, Kimberly Latrice Jones. You've already been in the trenches. You've already been doing this work. And just out of nowhere, they're looking at this video from Latrice, and they're like, wow, she's really talking about something using the Monopoly analogy. Mm-hmm. How did you feel when that all began to go viral?
I was so surprised because I thought it was going to get me canceled. Because of that, again, there are times when I feel overlooked because I'm just like, again, I am not welcome in spaces where they are looking for an educator when what they want is an entertainer. The greatest trick that the devil and the government plays on you is to convince you you have zero power. That is why we have such fear-mongering and hopelessness as the narrative that's circulating in all of our algorithms. Because if I tell you you don't have power, if you believe me, you won't move.
Do y'all hear that? Sometimes things can be unfair. They can be so unfair that at times you can feel overlooked. This is a personal matter to me. I've been overlooked, I've been rejected, but I want to be on a mission to help you to understand your purpose so you never feel overlooked again, that your voice will be heard, and that this will be your season. I am Apostle Dwight Buckner Jr. Tune in. Let's get started. The Overlook Show. Welcome to Overlook, a podcast. I'm Apostle Dwight Buckner Jr. I have a tremendous guest on today. Kimberly Latrice Jones has been advocating storytelling and making sure the voices that often get drowned out are heard. She was already in the trenches fighting for justice. But in 2020, the world truly took notice when Kimberly recorded a powerful video during the George Floyd protests. How can we win? A raw breakdown of systematic racism through the lenses of a Monopoly analogy went viral, resonating with millions and catching the attention of icons like Trevor Noah. The video became more than a moment. It became a movement. We welcome our sister, Kimberly Latrice Jones. How are you?
I'm so good. So good to be here with you.
Thank you for being here. Let me start out by asking this question. Before the world knew your name, you were already fighting for change. And when did you first realize that this was your purpose?
I was about 11.
Wow.
Maybe a little bit younger. No, it might have been more. I was 8. I was like 9. I was 9 years old. My mother worked for Sears. She worked at their corporate office at the Sears Tower. So she had to travel a lot to work with them. And so she took me and my sister with her to DC on a trip. My sister's 6 years older than me. And you know, in the 80s, you'd be 3 years older than somebody, you'd be a babysitter.
Right.
So she was at meetings and she left me with my sister, who was a teenager at the time. Okay. And we were in DC and a newscaster stopped my sister and wanted to interview her about what's going on in the world. They wanted to get a young person's perspective. And they saw this teenage girl. My sister, who is still painfully shy, did not want to answer. So they were like, well, that's okay. We'll do something. And I was like, I have answers. And they were like, you're 9. And I was like, I have thoughts about things. Yeah. And so they started interviewing me about world affairs and I was able to give commentary. And they were really shocked because I would read encyclopedias. I would watch the news with my parents. So I had all these thoughts. And so I went viral, if you will, when I was 9 because it was national news. And so people started calling my mother from Mississippi, from all these places, being like, did you see your baby on the news today telling the president what he needs to do? And I think that was the beginning of me understanding the importance of having a political opinion and being a community advocate. And it just kind of, my mother nurtured that. So she put me in an after school program at Operation Push. I went to another after school program at the DuSable Museum, and I started my own little organization when I was 11 to feed the homeless. And me and all my friends on Friday at 11, we would take our allowance, we would get on the L train, and we would go downtown and we would feed unhoused people. And so it's kind of been my life's journey.
Okay. And you grew up in Chicago.
Grew up in Chicago.
In the city.
I did. So I lived in rural Illinois until I was 10 on my grandmother's farm. And then, and I would always spend time in Chicago because our family was there. But then when we were 10, my mother remarried to my stepfather and we moved permanently into the city. So,
So 2020, I'm skipping ahead. You have this viral moment where you do this video that pushes out everywhere. How did you feel when that happened? You've already been in the trenches. You've already been doing this work. And just out of nowhere, they're looking at this video from Latrice, and they're like, wow, she's really talking about something using the Monopoly analogy. Mm-hmm. How did you feel when that all began to go viral?
I was so surprised because I thought it was going to get me canceled. I had started,
wow.
I thought it was going to be like the end of my writing career. Like, this is the thing that's going to be like, no one's going to hire me again. No one's going to work with me. But I was like, it is what it is. If this is the message that I was supposed to deliver and it ends my career, that's okay. I'll figure something else out to do. And so when it started to go viral, I called my writing partner, who I co-authored 3 of my 4 books with, Geely, and I said, listen, I want to apologize. I've done a thing. And I don't know how this is going to affect us and our book sales and our writing and our ability to publish. But this video that I posted is going viral, and it may have, I don't want to have any negative impact on you. So if you want to figure out language to start separating yourself from me, I'm okay with that. And I understand. And she sent me this mean message back and was like,
what?
She sent me this really mean message back, and she was just like, what kind of friend would I be if I left you? Wow. Why would I separate myself from you? Why would you even think that's what I would want to do? If we go down, we go down together.
Now that's the type of friends we need.
For sure.
Wow.
For sure.
So how did that affect your writing career? Did it escalate?
It definitely escalated. The book that she and I had written, we started working on that book in right after the death of Freddie Gray. That's what inspired I'm Not Dying With You Tonight. We had read this article about a group of students that got caught behind a police barricade and their parents couldn't get to them. And so we're writers, so that's how we process. And so we started writing this story about 2 girls who get caught in the middle of civil unrest and have to survive the night together, one white and one black, and force them to be only with them for most of the night. So they would have to enter into difficult conversations. And we made it where Lena, the black girl, is more savvy. So she's the reason they survived the night. But the white girl's father's store is being looted. And so they have to survive that together. And so we started writing that book, long time before that. We sold it in 2017. It was officially out in the world and published in 2019. And so it had some success. It had been nominated for the Image Award in that February of 2020. And we were in the black, but it wasn't great. It wasn't like a phenom book or anything like that. When that video went viral, it made the New York Times bestseller list.
Wow.
And then that's when I got the phone call from Warner Brothers, because someone at Warner Brothers had gotten it. Well, actually, I found out later, Ava DuVernay had sent that video to a bunch of executives at Warner Brothers.
Come on now.
And so they started digging around on me, and they were like, oh, she used to work for Tyler Perry. She used to work at Bravo. She's a filmmaker. And so then that's when Warner Brothers offered me my writing deal. So it took my writing career to another level. Like everybody else, they had all these big DEI plans in 2020. And so when my contract ended in 2022, they didn't renew it, partially because Discovery was taking over Warner Brothers, and Discovery brought in all their own creators and people, a whole new team. But I write for Country Wayne now, which is so much fun.
Really?
Yes, it's so much fun to work on his skits and stories and stuff like that. But a lot of my team from Warner Brothers that was working with me on I'm Not Dying With You Tonight, we are still together and still working on trying to get that to TV. So,
So How Can We Win took off, did you expect long-term change? Did you look at this like, wow, my life is about to change for the next 10 years or so? Or was it more just, did you think it was just a short-term type of exposure?
I thought it was short. I thought it would be short term. I'm like, people go viral every day. People are excited about them for 48 hours and then they move on and it's the next thing.
Come on.
But I think because of the climate that we were in, it was an opportunity for me to grow. And I'll say, because I was prepared for that moment more than most people are when they go viral. So because I was already...
How were you prepared?
Yes. So because I was already an author, I already had an agent, I already had a manager. So I already had a team to capitalize on any opportunities that came my way. And I already had a t-shirt line called Hood Girl Heroes. So I had all this stuff already kind of in place. So as opportunities come in, I already had an attorney, an accountant. I had all these things in place already. So every opportunity that came along with it, I was able to fully capitalize on it and make way for myself. The other thing is, especially when you're talking about social justice, people go viral because they're having a passionate moment and they're upset, but that's not really their calling, or that's not their study. I'm a scholar in African American studies and economics.
So you know what you're talking about.
Yeah, so I know what I'm talking about. So it's like, you don't have to just talk to me about the video. I've done all the talk shows. I can go on Joy Reid and talk about Black America and economics. I could go on Steve Harvey and all of these places and have these conversations because my knowledge wasn't limited to that video. That was, kind of the tip of the iceberg.
Great lesson for our listeners, and that is that be prepared in the event you experience a viral moment. You had all these people in place ready to go to capitalize, say, hey, listen, we ready. I'm ready to reach the masses even more because I have a competent team around me.
Yes.
Good. So after that moment had passed, how did you feel? Because you've experienced this high of going viral. I've had the chance to experience that a few times. And you get this high of going viral for a while, and then when it dies down, you're kind of like, man, I need to do something else. I need to recreate myself. Should I do something else to try to get back out there? How did you feel after that passed?
Contrary to popular belief, I'm extremely introverted. So I am a person that I can show up and do what it is that I need to do, but I am a person who recharges in solitude. So for me, the really high highs that most people look forward to and are excited about are cause me extreme anxiety. And so I'm just like, I'm not interested in this level of attention. I just want to do my work.
Do the work.
I just want to do the work and do my work. And so I actually like when things kind of like die down a little bit. Because I'm like, okay, now I can get back to my work. Now all the trolls have left my page. And now I can get back to, educating people and doing the work. But yeah, like, public attention and being a public figure is something that gives me severe anxiety.
Yeah. And you find out, that when you're out there, people just say really mean, cruel stuff about you that don't even know you, never met you, never had a conversation with you. And you're kind of like, well, who are you, to judge my life and to tell me that somebody would look at a video or see a post
and make a full commentary about who you are as a person.
Yes. Having not even met you, never had
never knew anybody like me.
Right. No. And they feel they're privileged to say what you can do and what you cannot do.
For sure.
Wow. So now let's get into this, because you experienced this moment of high exposure going viral with your video, and then you come down from that. And you're still fighting in the trenches, still working, still doing what you're called to do. Did you feel some sort of way in terms of like you may kind of be overlooked now that my video went viral, but nobody's hearing me anymore, or I'm doing the work, but I'm not getting the same attention? Did you feel like that at all?
Yeah, I feel like that all the time, and I'll tell you why. I feel that way because we are in the era of the influencer, right? So you have people in the world who are what I consider social justice influencers, exactly to your point of they've had a viral moment at some point and they have figured out the system to consistently do that repeatedly. And so they've made a business out of being a social justice influencer, which we need those people in the world too, right? They are giving commentary to the world. They are telling the world. But these are not the people that are in the trenches, that are going to City Hall, that are going to the State House, that are starting nonprofits to affect change, that are feeding the unhoused, that are working with former inmates, that are doing this type of grassroots work. And I find the moments in which I feel overlooked is not the moments of attention, but the moments of when they're in spaces where real change can be made. And then I look around at some of my comrades who are doing the real trench work, and we are not invited into those spaces. People who are social justice influencers are invited into those spaces. People who have TikToks where they post about what's going on in the news every day, and they're in those spaces, and you feel overlooked in the sense of, I know that they will have great commentary about what they experienced when they got invited to the White House or whatever the space is. It's like, but I actually have plans and actually need to have real conversations with people about critical structural change and what that can look like and what kind of team you would need to build to do that. So you have this person in the room who's an influencer who's going to say, this is how we're feeling. And those of us that can come into the room and say, this is what we need to do are not invited into those spaces. And sometimes that makes me feel overlooked because I'm like, it's great that you were there, but what is going to come out of you being there other than a photo op?
My God. Let's take a break, come right back. And when we come back, I want to get into those critical structural changes that you mentioned. What does that look like? I'm back with my wonderful guest.
And new cousin.
And my cousin? You see, my cousin. I'm back with my family member. My sister, Kimberly Latrice Jones, who's been giving us great insight on social justice. I want to get into the structural system of what that really looks like because you mentioned photo op. Some people just want a photo op to look like they're doing the work, but you're actually in the trenches, making it happen, and you can bring solutions. How does that look?
Well, the number one thing that I looked at when I started to do my research was what era of time were Black people successful, economically successful in this country. And so what I looked at, there were two very significant eras of time in which Black people were successful. And that was post-war Reconstruction, right? And then post-World War II. So those were the two eras in time when we were the most successful, the most economically sound. So that's when you saw during Reconstruction, that's when you saw the development of places like Seneca Village and Tulsa and Rosewood and Wilmington, North Carolina, and all of these places. And so I said, what is it that was different about that group of people versus the people that we have now? And what it was they were skilled tradesmen. And then when I looked and went and looked during the civil rights movement, when people don't realize that everyday church folks funded the civil rights movement, I said, what were they doing differently than we were doing now? And there were two things that were distinctive in both of those times. We had a larger percentage of marriage.
Come on.
That was one. And then the second thing we were skilled tradesmen. We were electricians, plumbers, beauticians, all of those things. And so when I really started to think about it, I said, well, I don't know how I can affect marriage. I don't know how I can get us to understand the importance of family and marriage. And I'm sure there's somebody out there who's got that part figured out. But what I can figure out is this giving skills and trades back to our people because most of us are either unemployed or underemployed. And so I started a nonprofit.
Why do you think that is?
Well, one, we convinced everybody that they needed to go to college. And I don't think everyone needs to take on that brain mortgage of going to a university.
Brain mortgage.
Yes.
I'm taking that. Go ahead. I'm taking it. I'm gonna say it like
I'm giving it to you. I'm giving it to you. Yes, I don't think everyone needs to take that brain mortgage on. And I think we're forcing people to believe that is the route. And we were forcing people to get this massive amount of debt to then have jobs that didn't make sense as to why they would have to pay that debt back. Because we demonized being an electrician, being a plumber, being an auto mechanic, being all of these things, which the fastest growing sector of millionaires in the United States right now are tradesmen. Plumbers, electricians, all of these people. And so I started a nonprofit called...
Those are the fastest group of millionaires.
The fastest growing set of millionaires in the country right now is plumbers. Plumbers. Have you ever had to pay a plumber?
Not YouTuber.
Not YouTuber.
A plumber.
Plumbers.
Do y'all hear that?
Yeah.
The fastest growing millionaires are plumbers. Go ahead.
Yes. So I started a nonprofit called Vocation Ventures, and what we started as an event. So very similar to how you have a college fair, we had a trade school fair, and we had the trade schools from all over the city of Atlanta in one place, and we put it all out in the world, and we had all of these adults come in, and then I realized we had all of these adults come in, which was amazing because not only did we have trade schools there, we had trade level jobs there. So we had 911, the sheriff's department. We had Fulton County there to get people in government level jobs, things like that. But it hit me like We have a bunch of 17 and 18-year-olds that are lost that are going to graduate this year, and they're going to take minimum wage jobs when I can get them in some of these apprenticeship programs. There are apprenticeship programs with all the unions where you're not even paying for trade school. They're paying you
to go
to while
get
you're
the training.
To get the training. While you're in your apprenticeship, you're making somewhere between $60,000 and $80,000 as an apprentice annually. Imagine that at 19. You got a $70,000 a year job, and then you're coming out and you're making in the six figures in these trades for metal workers, electricians, all of these things. And so we initially just started as an event doing the trade school fair twice a year to get people in. We worked with APS to get students in, and then we realized we needed to expand it. So this year with our expansion, what we've been doing is creating scholarships for people to go to trade school. We got in touch with the AFL-CIO, which is the union that governs all unions. And so we worked with them to get in contact with all the union heads to start finding out how do we get people enrolled in these apprenticeship programs. And then what's on our agenda for the end of this year, we are going to expand it into creating programs for the formerly incarcerated, because we need to be very specific with them, because some of these programs they could go into, but because of their criminal history, they wouldn't even be able to use the licenses they get. So we need to curate that list to know which fields they can actually go into with a record and get them into those programs. Because that's also going to help with recidivism of prison, because the majority reason why people go back to prison is not what people think. It's not because they're just like getting fights and criminal minded. It's being underemployed, which forces them to go back to their former criminal activity to survive. Because I always say a starving man will do what a starving man needs to do. And so to impact our community, we have to impact economics. So, and the fastest way we're going to do that is to get people back into trades and getting these higher level tradesman jobs and being able to, and I feel that then that will affect marriage, because many people today are not getting married, because especially our brothers, because they don't feel they can afford to manage a household and provide for a household. So if we're giving them these opportunities, they will be more likely to see the potential of marriage.
I love what you're doing with the trades and things of that nature. I myself am a recipient of someone that had a trade. I was a barber for many years. Learned it from my great uncle was a barber and a pastor. And then when I came to Georgia, I was cutting hair, and then opened a shop, had a shop for 14 years. Wow. And I lived off of my trade. I started my church in my barbershop.
Look at that.
And so that trade thing is important. And I think it's also critical to note that at some point, we got to have the mindset that we're not too good for certain jobs. Ain't nothing wrong with being a plumber. You know, there's nothing wrong with taking on some of these trades, and something that you can use. And they're, like you said, they're paying you. To get the training. Training. In our generation, there's this whole thing of, if you're not going viral, if you're not doing YouTube, if you're not doing this, then you're not going to be nothing. Completely opposite. But when I was growing up, you know, we grew up with strong work ethics. You know, I had to learn how to cut grass and trim hedges and things of that nature, because you never know what you were about to fall.
Baby entrepreneurs. I had a babysitting business.
Come on, I had barbershop when I was 10, cutting hair out the house. It was our parents instilled into us. Our family instilled into us the importance of learning how to work and having a trade. Let me say this: I love the Monopoly analogy you used on your video. Where did you get that from?
So interestingly enough, when I teach, because I teach at several universities, and then I also always volunteer my time for like the Girls Who Brunch Tour, which is an organization run by my dear friend, Dr. Nicola Mitchell. I always volunteer with her girls on her program. And so Monopoly is a game that I've used to teach economics. I've used it to teach economics and also the disparity of economics. So what I've done with students over the years is say, we're going to play economics, but I'm going to start you with $1,000. You can't collect your money for the first 10 rounds. You can just play the game as is, how it's supposed to be played. And I want to see who wins. If I start you with an advantage, I give you a disadvantage, and I just give you a fair playing field. like clockwork, every time either the person who started with the advantage or the person that just was allowed to play at the playing field, the person with the disadvantage. I've never played a game that way, and they won. And so I wanted them to see, because I wanted them to understand when they look at Black people in America and the financial setup that we have, and the world keeps telling us to catch up. I'm like, how do you catch up when you've had generations of wealth building for everyone but us? And that the government was very strategic in how they did that, because we talk a lot about the projects and stuff like that, but we don't talk about the fact that between 1920 and 1966, the U.S. government underwrote $280 billion in home lending, and 98% of that went to white America. 2% of that went to everyone else, Black, Indigenous, Asian, Latin, everyone. And they did that to build the American suburb, those $9,000 homes that they were able to buy in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, that now they've been able to pass down generationally, which I have a copy of one of the mortgages. I keep it to remind people, where it literally said in the mortgages that you could not resell these homes to Black or Jews. And so when you look at things like that happened, that they gave us the project, but they gave them home ownership. When you look at the fact that we have not had entree into industry in the way in which everyone else has had entree into industry. And so I've had people...
Entree into industry.
Yes. I've had people push back on me and say, well, you have all these successful Black people. What are you talking about when you said in the video, we don't own anything? I say, I stand on that, because here's what I'll tell you. For every LeBron James that you show me, what I'm going to do is walk you into that stadium, and I'm going to tell you LeBron James has pennies in comparison to the person who owns the plastics company that makes the chairs in the stadium. He has pennies in comparison to the person who is the metal worker that owns the metal that was used to build the stadium. When you talk to me about your cousin who has a t-shirt company, your cousin can have $1 million t-shirt company. They don't have a dime on the person who owns the cotton. So entree into industry takes generations of wealth building to get to the point where you own a metal company, where you own a massive amount of cotton fields. So when you think about the fact that we had over 200 years of being enslaved, and then 78 years of Jim Crow, and then we had the strategic use of, to me, one of the most devastating moments in Black history was the crack epidemic that was placed upon us. You really are only talking about 30 years of access to wealth for Black America. There is a way. So in 30 years, yes, I can build a t-shirt company, but I don't own the cotton. I don't own the ink. I don't make the metal that goes into the machine for the print company. That is a different level of wealth.
You know, I listened to a piece of that in one of your videos when you said the beautiful thing about the cotton analogy. And when I heard it, I was convicted. And I started looking at stuff around my house like, what can I own? What could I make that would create this generational wealth? And the comparison that, yeah, they have money, but the person that made owns the cotton, or made the shirt, or made the chair and brought all that together, owns the stadium, all that stuff is a whole different level of wealth. How do we get our people from renting to owning? How do we get the mindset that you can actually own more and become an owner, be empowered to be an owner, to leave generational wealth for your kids, to leave the mindset of being an owner to your children? Because one of the challenges I run into, particularly in our community, our church is in Decatur, an urban area. We love Decatur, a heartbeat of Decatur, is to get them to have the mindset that you can be an owner. You could have more than what you have. You don't have to live check to check. You don't have to be begging and borrowing. How do we get them to have that mindset that I can become an owner? I can create wealth for my kids?
I go all the way back, which is why I feel like Spirit gave me this mission to do. I go right back to my tradesmanship, right? Because when you work with your hands, when you are a tradesman, when you have a skill set, you will become a very efficient problem solver. And when you become a very efficient problem solver, then it creates innovation into you to solve problems. I think about Augustus Jackson, right? So Augustus Jackson was a young boy who, through research, I've discovered he was not enslaved. People want to say he was enslaved. He was not enslaved. He was a young boy who worked at the White House when he was 9 years old. So child labor. So there's that. He might have not been enslaved, but child labor at 9 years old.
Right.
9 years old, he is working in the kitchens at the White House feeding presidents. One of the great delicacies that they loved at the White House was ice cream. They would serve ice cream. But at that time, the ice cream recipe was an egg-based recipe, which means it spoiled very quickly, which means that when you served, it was for the rich, because when you served ice cream, you had to eat it right there. You could not preserve it. So Augustus Jackson, who becomes known for this ice cream, when he gets a little older, he moves to Philadelphia, and he realizes, if I am going to democratize this ice cream so that people in my community here can have it, I have to figure a way how to preserve it better. So he created an ice cream recipe that took the egg out of it, and then he added the salt into it for preservation. So ice cream being able to be eaten and packaged and sold as we know it now comes from a black man named Augustus Jackson, who democratized it so he would sell it in tins, because he realized that tins would keep it colder and make it last longer. And so that he did that so that he could serve this delicacy to the people in his community at a cheaper price and at higher preservation. So when you give people skills, it naturally forces them day to day to their mindset changes, because they have to solve problems every day. And when you solve problems every day, then you will become innovative in the way in which you solve problems. And I can name a million things like that. Ranch dressing. People don't know that Hidden Valley Ranch was black owned until the 1970s, and Clorox purchased it from the black husband and wife who had a ranch called Hidden Valley Ranch. They invented the recipe for ranch dressing. Now, why did he invent the ranch dressing? He invented it because he was a construction worker, and he was the construction company he worked for would go get black workers and hold them in these places to build for long periods of time and give them the bare minimum food. They didn't have spices or anything like that. The food was drab. He was the cook. One day he puts mayonnaise and some seasonings and some things together, comes up with ranch dressing, and all of the workers loved it so much they started putting it on everything. He goes and builds Hidden Valley Ranch, his ranch, and then he serves it on all of it at the restaurant on his ranch. He's serving it there, and then in 1972, he sold it to Clorox for $8 million. But again, that innovation came from having a skill set. And so if we get people back to having skill sets, having problems, becoming daily problem solvers, then they become innovators. And when you innovate, you don't want other people to be able to sell your innovation. You do.
You just took, I think, the whole world to school. Lord, I'll never think about Hidden Valley Ranch the same. Because you just gave me some history there. My God. We'll take a quick break. This is Overlooked. We'll come right back with our wonderful guest, Kimberly Latrice Jones. I'm back with my wonderful guest, Kimberly Latrice Jones. Let's continue on with our conversation, because before we left off, you blew me away with the Hidden Valley Ranch, and I'll never look at that again the same. I mean, just gave the whole world a history lesson. You mentioned when we were talking offline that there's some people that want you to come on just to hype them up, encourage, but they don't really want you to be a problem solver to help. Explain that a little bit to me.
Yeah, in the theme of Overlooked, I find sometimes that, there are spaces where what they are looking for is for someone to get an emotional reaction out of their audience. That high media wants you to come on. What they want me to do is to do a performance of what I did in the video. And they want me to say things that are going to get people riled up. That'll be great clickbait that they can share, that people will come under the post and be like, "Atta girl." They are not interested in me coming on and actually educating. They are not interested in me coming on and being solution based. They're definitely not interested in me teaching people how to navigate government. And so because of that, again, there are times when I feel overlooked, because I'm just like, again, I am not welcome in spaces where they are looking for an educator when what they want is an entertainer.
So your overlooked is they don't want you to come and educate people. They don't mind you having a photo or a viral moment.
Right.
They don't want you giving them the tools
exactly
and equipping them with the necessary things they need to move forward and to grow on their journey.
Exactly.
Let me ask this question here. How have you handled, even the last 6 months, you being in a position where you know you can help, you're walking around knowing you can educate more and help more and educate more, but just not given an opportunity to really get in a place where, hey, I'm doing it right now on a bigger scale. You're doing it now.
Yeah. No, I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
I mean, that has been there are curses in it, but that has been the blessing of social media. I have a significant social media following. I have over 200,000 followers on Instagram and 100,000 on TikTok and places like that. And so it's like communication has been democratized. So, okay, y'all don't want to give me the platform. That's okay. I got 200,000 people on Instagram that I can educate, and they'll share my video and they'll pass it around. It's funny. I had a video that on social media, people shared a lot recently, but it didn't get the same response as the initial video, which was necessary and very impassioned. But I basically broke down in the video that went semi-viral recently how to form a political PAC in your community and what that looks like so that you can actually have impact at the state level, at the city level, and at the county level, where people were sharing it, but there was no news people asked me to come on. Nobody asked me to come on their talk show and talk about that video because it was clear instruction on how to form a PAC and actually affect the government. And it's like, because most people are not civically savvy. Most people are not civically educated. And so they don't even know how to interact with their government. Most people think that the vote is the party. The vote is the ticket to the party. It's not the party. Civic engagement is the party once you purchase the ticket. I always tell this story about, I had a house here in Atlanta on 2nd and Memorial, and I had about 1/8 of an acre on the side of my house, big plot, grassy plot. And my son, who's in college, who is his mama's child, he's poli-sci pre-law. Okay. And, when he was little, though, I wouldn't let him play because that corner was so busy that cars would barrel into our yard all the time from accidents. Wow. So I would have to take him to the park to play because I felt like even if I was out there while he was playing, if I wasn't fast enough to get to him, if he was chasing a ball or something, a car could hurl in and kill my baby. And so if I was savvy about Black history at that point, economics. I was not as savvy about government then as I am now. If I understood how government works then, instead of complaining, there's always cars coming into my yard and just being upset about it, I would have understood that my first step was to go down to a city council meeting, sign myself up for public comment and say, hey, this is the area I live in on 2nd and Memorial. We have this issue. Talk to my city councilman directly at that meeting and say, we need an assessment of that corner because we may need additional lanes. So we need GDOT to come out and assess that corner. And if you actually pull the records, you will see the exorbitant amount of car accidents that happened on that corner. It is as simple as that. And then filing a petition and getting my neighbors to file a petition to get the corner assessed. Now, what happens is developers moved into that neighborhood and the developers understand that. So everything we could have done as citizens, the developers who built new developments on that corner did that. That exact same corner now has an additional lane that was added. It has additional lights that was added. But the greatest trick that the devil and the government plays on you is to convince you have zero power. That is why we have such fear-mongering and hopelessness as the narrative that's circulating in all of our algorithms. Because if I tell you don't have power, if you believe me, you won't move. And so what I've been trying to teach people is if you understand how local, state, and county government works, that is where you have the most power. Now, at the federal level, unless you have millions of dollars to lobby, that may be a bit more difficult. But lobbying at the local, state, and county level is as simple as going to the meetings. I watched they were about to pass a noise ordinance in a district that was where bars and clubs are. In 48 hours, they formed the Bar Association, where everything from bottle girls to dancers to DJs to club promoters, club owners organized. They came to a city hall meeting 400 deep. Only about 5 of them spoke. All of them signed up for public comment, and then they all conceded their time to Killer Mike. Killer Mike stood up and talked for 45 minutes. They killed that bill right there on the floor. There was no money raised. There was no anything. Literally just showing up at the city hall meeting and showing the force of what they had put together in 48 hours. And they were able to shut down a noise ordinance bill that was going to shut their business. And that's what I want people to learn.
Power in numbers.
There's power in numbers, and there's power in understanding how government actually works and how to civically engage. Right now, the city of Atlanta has over 200 community boards that need to be filled, that are over everything from fatherhood to streets and roads. And these boards are supposed to be filled by citizens, and 80% of them are sitting empty.
My. I wanna shift gears here because I know our time is wrapping up. We talked earlier about when you are a solution, people can't handle you. And I think some of the challenges that people that have been overlooked run into, such as yourself and me, is that when people see you, they see a solution. They see that you came to fix a broken system. They see that you showed up with not just answers, but the right answers. They see that you're equipped with tools. And for that reason, some people will shun that. They can't handle all of you, the full capacity of your intellect and your knowledge and your wisdom on matters. And so I want to just take a moment just to applaud you for the fact of all this wisdom you've absorbed through the years, through your studies and through experience and through what you've been through relationally, is now coming to a place where not only are you going to continue to impact a community, continue to impact the city, but globally, your reach is getting ready to stretch far beyond, I believe, of what you've seen. So I want to just say that to you because I'm just hearing you. I'm just hearing you. And I'm like, man, she need to have her own show on CNN, just helping folk, just tuning in to you, just because of what you have. Because you've taken, I think, this entire studio to school and the online audience to school today, and I want to appreciate it and thank you. Lastly, how have you handled this season in your life? In terms of you've been overlooked, you felt overlooked. How have you gotten over it? What have you done to say to yourself, you know what? I am going to be heard. I am going to keep working hard. I am going to keep educating and doing what I'm supposed to do.
The number one thing that I've done is to recognize that as much as I value my work and as much as God has blessed me with this gift and called me to do this work, and even when I didn't want to do it, was like, you can try to do what you want to do, little girl. Best of luck to you. The one thing that I have learned is the most revolutionary thing that I can do is self-improvement.
Woo!
And learning to balance life. And so I created this system called the 9 priorities for a balanced life. And those 9 priorities for a balanced life are career, home, transportation, relationships, finances, health, hobby, and education. And so what I recognize that when I'm feeling off balance, when I'm feeling like something is off, I will sit down and write out those 9 priorities, and I'll see what I have going on in each one, and I'll see where I'm off balance. I'll say, okay, my hobby is to travel. And I'll say, okay, I haven't been on a trip in a year, in 6 months, or whatever the case may be. And I'll call my assistant and make sure that gets planned out. Or I'll say, man, I have family here, but I can't tell you the last time I made a trip to Detroit to see my sister, or went to my brother's house and just had coffee with him and caught up with him, or took my son to a movie. And so what I realize is the most impactful people, and I have been around some prolific people. I've had the opportunity over the course of my life to work for everybody from Whitney Houston to Tyler Perry. So I've been around some amazing people. But what I realized, the most impactful people in my life, the people who keep me going, to answer your question, that make me, when I get up in the morning, I say I have to keep going, was my mother and my grandmother. And so when I think about my mother also is a very prolific woman. My mother is the mother of AI, and so my next book is about her, called the Robot Lady. She programmed the first AI robots in 1976 that delivered the mail in the Sears Tower.
Wow.
And so when I think about my mother's impact in innovation, then I think about my grandmother, who was this woman who had a second grade education, came from rural Mississippi, moved to Illinois, taught herself to read by reading the Bible, became an ordained minister, opened her own church, eventually bought this 20-acre farm out in rural Illinois. But how my grandmother took care of everybody in that community, how everybody loved her, all of my cousins, my aunts, my uncles, my siblings. She was the conduit for everybody to get from Mississippi, Jim Crow, Mississippi, to Chicago. Everybody knew, they called her Annie. Everybody knew when you came from Mississippi, you could stay at Annie's house until you could get on your feet. And she would make sure when you left her house, you really were on your feet. And so I think about, as much as we give accolades to the celebrities, the stars, the scientists that we love, it was the big mamas and the granddaddies and the uncles that really had the impact on us. And so I ceased making my aspirations being about the success of my career and wanted my aspirations to be, when I'm 80 years old in a house coat on the porch, what will my son say about me? What will my nieces and how will my nieces and nephews and my great nieces and nephews feel about me? What will my cousins say at my services? How will my spouse feel when I am gone? And I realized that my ambition cannot be about being the Dr. King, but being the greatest big mama.
Amazing, amazing. I want to thank you for being here with me today on this episode of Overlooked.
Thank you for having me.
And you have blessed me tremendously. I would love to connect further with you. I pray all of your endeavors. And let me just take a moment. And well, first of all, how can we get in touch with you? How can we check out your social media? How can we locate you on those?
Yes, people can find me. Instagram is where I mostly live. They can find me there. It's just my full name, Kimberly Latrice Jones. But I also have a website with the same name, which is www.kimberlylatricejones.com.
Okay, awesome. I speak over your life that everything you touch this season is going to prosper for you, that God's going to open up doors for you that no man can shut. And he's going to take you further, even to the political arena. We're going to speak to people you're going to empower them with your voice, with your wisdom, with your knowledge. And God's going to do tremendous things in your life. Thank you so much for being with me.
Thank you.
All right. Well, this has been another episode of Overlooked. Thank you for tuning in. Our wonderful guest today, Kimberly Latrice Jones, has been with us. She shared a wealth of knowledge with us on today. For those of you that are going to watch the replay, and those of you that are currently watching the replay, I pray that it blessed you. I'll see you again on the next episode of Overlooked. I'm Apostle Dwight Buckner Jr. You can find this episode on Apostle Dwight Buckner Jr. on YouTube. All right? Blessings.